From Jerusalem, Israel, this is From the Midwest to the Middle East, the podcast that explores everything new in U.S. and Israeli economy. Here's your host, Philip Stein.
I'm very, very pleased it's not every day that I have on my podcast a return visitor, more like a guest, Maya Natan from Keshet. Once upon a time, we had a very interesting conversation in I call it the early days of Keshet. These are not exactly the later days of Keshet, but I feel there's new things. And I felt that people were so interested in Keshet the first time around. I got very good feedback. Maya has spoken at events that we've organized because it's a subject dear to my heart, tzedakah, and smart way of giving tzedakah, which also is tax efficient. So I'm welcoming you back, not Maya, so you can put on your return guest, which is there's only a few of you out there. Okay.
Thank you for having me, Philip. It's great. Always great to speak to you.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to talk about new stuff at Keshet, new developments, but for those listeners who may not have heard our first podcast, can you give us just a little history and what Keshet's mission, was and it?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So last time we spoke was really early on. I must sort of thank you for always believing that Keshet is doing the right thing and that it should be heard. You were one of my first interviews, really. And since then, Keshet is 5 years old now. Really amazing that all this time has passed. It's been some say a hell of a ride. It still is not very pleasant times, and it's not easy necessarily, because it's been a difficult 2 years in the past 2 years of the war, and also beforehand we started during COVID. So very, very challenging, but on the other hand, it was the right timing to set up Keshet, because if you remember, I was the director of the Jewish Funders Network in Israel before starting Keshet. And when we spoke, I was still in JFN, building Keshet and operating JFN on the same time. And what happened is that we noticed that Israeli donors do not give at the same scale and do not necessarily use tax and legal structures as one of their decision-making elements while they were giving. And I was curious because I know American philanthropy, and I know that it's very much a combined decision. You have the values and you have the things that you want to support, but on the same hand, it's a logical decision, and you want to plan and do and maximize your tax benefits while you're at it. So looking into it, I've noticed that the tax and legal structures that Israelis can use when they give were not really suitable for a timely decision. When you want to make a decision fast, and when you want to make it at a specific tax year, and maybe you want to make it at the end of a tax year. So that was the original sort of push to bring to Israel the donor advised fund model. There were no donor advised funds before Keshet, and so we built a not-for-profit company. I thought it will take at least 5 to 10 years until I get the first sort of, 100 million shekels in play. And what happened is that very fast, Keshet grew exponentially, not linear. And then each year since then, we've doubled or tripled the amount of money that was contributed to Keshet, and also we work at a very high pace of donating to NGOs outside of Keshet. So in these 5 years, and also from different models that I will tell you about later, we're reaching 1 billion shekels that were donated to Keshet, and we donated. We were surprised as well. Kol hakavod to the Tomim who are the donors who work with us, really very, very, very impressive numbers. I think it was because the timing was great. 2000 and I think it was 21 was a very a robust high-tech year where there were a lot of exits and IPOs and people made a lot of money. And I think we were ready at that time to capture those who were ready to act and to open the first accounts with us. So we also donated 500 million shekels to NGOs outside of Keshet in these 5 years, which is a very high pace if you think about it. We built the model on thinking that people will donate only 5% a year to NGOs. It's 50% to NGOs.
Wow.
I think it might not be the greatest economic model for Keshet, and we do have to sort of adjust and see how we find different sources of revenue. But for the third sector in Israel and for the times that we are facing, it's the right thing to do.
I'll interrupt for a second because I have some other involvement with people and charitable causes, and I've spoken with some donors, and I think, this period, call it October 7th till today, people who had, were people who give or wanted to give or be involved, they've told me they didn't think it would last this long. In other words,
Yeah.
that the requirements, what they're being asked to continue to support, they thought initially this was for a few months, and so they are keeping their proverbial wallets open. So I think
Yes.
your numbers reflect that. I
Yes.
think, hopefully this period will end sooner than later, and probably things will settle down. But the needs, have been amazing, tremendous, and people's willingness to give has been,
Equally tremendous.
yeah. So it's a
I
very
agree.
interesting
I agree.
statistic that you bring. Yes.
I agree.
So
it's been a fantastic growth, and we're
yeah.
very happy about it.
I think it's something you have to really be proud of, and we'll talk a little later about your team. But let's, I was at your office a few weeks ago. There was a very interesting presentation or presentations. But let's talk about some of the new things, particularly, when we first met, and that was breakthrough for Israel, where, some what I'd call a high-techist could take their stock pre-exit, donate it to Keshet, get the charitable deduction, not pay the tax, something that had,
Right.
Had been available forever within the US, but was really a breakthrough in Israel. But now you've moved sort of beyond that. So let's talk a little about the types of assets and people, how people can.
Sure.
Okay.
So we really wanted to allow people to make, like I said before, to make smart decisions about what they are giving, when they are giving it, and for when they make the decision, for the process to be easy. So because it is a bit bureaucratic, and there is paperwork, and we know that there's, Rashut HaMisim, and we need our accountant to be involved. We need the family office to be a part of the process. We know that there's bureaucracy, but we wanted to sort of reduce the level of bureaucracy and make it possible at different stages when people make money. So if you go through the life, let's focus on the high-tech sector for a second. Every founder, when they get the first sort of big income moment, usually it's during a secondary sale, not during an exit or an IPO. So we know today how to receive their stocks or their options during a secondary and then sell it together with them to whomever is buying their company, their shares.
Right.
By the way, it's also true if you're selling a private company to whether it will be an insurance company or another buyer, we can always go into the deal with you. And then the money, the shares that you give to us are tax-free, of course. You will get the 35% deduction on the estimate, on the value, according to the accountant last report. And then we sell it together and you have an account with Keshet, just like everybody else. So that's we've done it a few times. It's really an easy process now for the donors. And we usually practice a can-do attitude, which means that if we face a challenge, if there's something that we don't know, we usually try to figure it out together and not let them deal with it on their own.
Right.
Another part of it was that, like I said, during the last 5 years, most of maybe 50% or more than 50% of the assets that were donated to us were shares. Whether in Israel or outside of Israel, it's a process that we know how to do well. But we've noticed that people have other assets like rights in a VC, LPs that they can then donate. Wow. Again, with the value being given to us by an accountant, a signed document. We can then give the deduction, and also when the shares or the rights are being transferred to us, there is no tax event, which means that they're not paying taxes. And when the proceeds from all of the different exits that the VC were investing in happening, then the money comes to us directly without a tax intervention in the middle. So you don't have to sell it, then you pay tax, then you donate the money. We do work with the donor to explain that Keshet cannot participate, cannot be actively engaged with a VC, but we can definitely be a silent shareholder that receives the proceeds when it's time. So it really is much more sophisticated than just shares.
Yeah, that's a very sophisticated asset for you to be able to appraise, which I know you get obviously professional appraisals, get them the deduction, and the liquidity may be, depending on the complexities we know of VC funds as to when you actually see cash. So that's quite a benefit for someone who's a venture capital.
Yes. Yes, especially if the fund is matured and it's getting closer to get proceeds like for the end term. It's a smart decision tax wise. Another perspective.
I know you can take real estate, art.
Yes. So right now we actually have we're looking at maybe possibly getting a land in the United States that can be donated. And then usually what we do with both real estate and art is that we try to sell it by professionals who that's what they do. And then to get the asset liquidated and then transferred to Keshet. And the process is always the same. You always have a professional estimating the value, signed document, then we can transfer the rights and then we can sell it.
So you mentioned earlier in the conversation about your pre-Keshet career was with Jewish Funders Network, and those are ultra high net worth and I use the term families, because it tends to be, those models are charitable foundations or charitable trusts. And usually, from my experience, the generation that sets these up hopes that future generations will stay involved. How does that work with the Keshet platform, where Gen 1 may be either not be active or exits this world, and Gen 2 and maybe Gen 3 can still be involved in causes that Gen 1 was interested in?
So let's start by saying that if you remember during the meeting in our offices, Amira Levy, who's a board member at Keshet and also a very well-trained lawyer who has a career achievement in multi-generational giving, he said during the meeting that philanthropy can be a fantastic tool for parents to have their kids practice collaboration and management of funds before they receive ownership of the family wealth. Because when you set up a foundation that your kids can work together, then they get an opportunity to do that in the not-for-profit world before they do it in the for-profit world. So that's one aspect that people should think about. How when the way that Keshet supports that decision making is that there are multiple ways to do it. Like parents who want to secure funds for their children to be given after 120 plus, as we call it, after they're no longer with us. Usually what they do is they write Keshet in their will. And they leave in their will the portion of their assets that they want to contribute to their kids' accounts at Keshet. And when they do that, I know that in America, because of the inheritance law, a tax, usually people do that and they also get tax returns for that. In Israel, we don't have an inheritance tax as of today. But people do think that it will be wise to give a portion of their wealth to their kids as philanthropy and not as for-profit money or just a gift.
Well, actually, Maya, I had a discussion just the other day with someone, and you actually mentioned it just a few minutes ago about someone perhaps donating U.S. real estate. Now I'm just giving a little tax advertisement here. If an Israeli has U.S. real estate, they have very big exposure to U.S. estate tax. They have almost no exemption.
Indeed.
And if they had left that, if they would leave that real estate to Keshet, that would really solve a lot of problems.
I agree.
So actually, Israel, you're right, doesn't have an estate tax, but Israelis could be subject to estate tax in the United States. And this ability to leave Keshet as the heir.
Yes.
Right. It won't save them income tax, but
it will definitely, they don't have to pay the 50% inheritance tax.
Right. So is that just, I'm going to jump a little ahead, but that leaving the asset in their will, is that what you were talking about when we were about Hekdesh? Is that your?
So Hekdesh is a bit more sophisticated because Hekdesh meaning is first of all, I think Hekdesh in Israel, which is almost like a trust in America, but it's a public, well, some of the Hekdeshim are public. It's when I think is more suitable for people who have very large sums of money or wealth that they want to leave for public charity. We usually, when you have over 100 million shekels, it will be somewhat difficult for you to just hand it over to donate it to a different entity, because it means that it's irrevocable and it's not under your jurisdiction anymore. But you did get a tax return for it when you did it. The aspect of Hekdesh is, I think, suitable for those families who want to keep the public or the charitable asset under their jurisdiction. Usually they will have to appoint 2 trustees at least that are not family members and manage the Hekdesh according to the laws, according to the rules that they wrote in the Ktav Hekdesh, which is when they set it up in court, they have to be very specific of where and how they want to manage it. So Keshet is now looking, we haven't yet finalized it, but it's in the process of, we're in the process of making it happen. of allowing families to appoint Keshet as a trustee in a Hekdesh. We think that it's probably going to be for families 100 million shekels and above.
Okay.
We just think that it's not worth the hustle to do it and the money and the setup costs for less than 100 million. Maybe there will be others who will decide to do it for less. We want to allow people to appoint a trustee like us, which is a public organization who has longitude, who can stay here, will stay with a Hekdesh for a longer period of time. We can bring professionalism in the decision making, the know-how, but the third sector in Israel. If the family would want, we can help with management of the money. We can help with the grants. So having sort of a one-stop shop for everything you need and ensuring that the support that your family will get will be professional and really without any agendas, I think it will be very valuable for those families who will choose to go the Hekdesh route, so to speak. It is still it's not new as a legal structure. By the way, it's not an entity. It's not a cheletz or an amuta. But Hekdesh can also get Seif 46, so they can also be giving tax deductions later on.
But I think it's very interesting, important, and again, with the trend and the amount of wealth that's created in Israel, and maybe
it could be an option, yes.
Wealthy families, and as you know from I'm sure your side of the work and my side, that leaving too much money for future generations, you're really doing them a disservice. You really can ruin them, and this is, it keeps a lot of the family values alive, and I think it's.
And you can also have a legacy this way, because you can also think about what it is that you want your family name to mean and what it is that you want to support and promote in Israel. And I think this is by leaving it, whether it's at Keshet by opening accounts or at Iktesh, you can then really, really think about your legacy for the time, even beyond the years that you live here.
Correct.
Yes.
We're getting toward the end, but I was at your new offices, or I don't know how new they were.
It is new. It's very new.
For me, they were new. And you actually presented your staff, but you do have a unique staff. And what type of backgrounds do people have? First of all, as the father of 5 daughters, it's a whole woman staff. So that's something was impressive to me. But where do these people come from to work at Keshet?
So I call them the Keshet Lioness because they are strong, very professional women. I try to recruit according to the professional level of each of the specific type of jobs or services that we want to give. So, of course, the first recruitment was a CFO. Eliana Albanes comes from a very rich background in all sectors. She worked for Chevrat Chashmad. She worked for the Clinton Foundation in America. She has a very wide range. She worked for a high-tech company in Israel. Then she worked at an NGO, Kochvei Midbar, in the South. So I truly believe that people with a very extensive knowledge and that were able to move between the sectors have an ability to understand and speak to different people from different places, but also have a very high level of professionalism, especially finance, which is very important to Keshet because, as you know me, I'm a precise person. I need everything. Compliance needs to be at the top, and we understand that we're dealing with other people's money and at a very high level because we work with big donors, and so she comes from a very, very extensive knowledge and experience. Both are operational and people who work with her come from the same background. Adi Simpson is also a lawyer, which means that we have both. But because she's not an investment person, we also have an investment advisor. His name is Nir Omid, and he works with us constantly with the investment committee, because we must make sure that we manage our assets at the same level that we give the services. In our grants department, both Jennifer and Leah come from, again, extensive knowledge in the NGO sector. They worked in different places, both worked for foundations and federations, so they know how to do due diligence processes. They know how to speak with the NGO. They know how to give advice to donors who might not know where they want to direct their grants. So I think, and they can do it very well, both in Hebrew and in English, which is very important to both of us. Jennifer actually was born in New York, so it's a real asset with both of them. And our marketing director also comes from a background of marketing in the NGO sector, but last place she worked for was in the academia. So she worked for a college as a marketing director, and I think she understands that world very well, including new media and social media. So each and every one is an expert in their field, and I feel very proud to work with them. We recently also recruited Amira Aronovich, who used to be the director of the Jewish Agency, and she is going to set up the new company for the Hekdeshim.
So I don't know if this was a number of years ago, but it made a big impression on me. It was a TED Talk by a fellow in the non-for-profit, and the traditional, I know this from friends, clients, they only want to give to places that have very low overhead. But he turned it on its head and said, no, you have to, if you want to recruit, this was for a non-for-profit, the best people to have it run well, to all the things you've talked about, finance, marketing, admin, grant, you actually want to pay these people and get them out of the sectors they're in, because you will have a much more effective, and I think that's
absolutely,
whether you saw that TED Talk or not, I think you're living that. So
absolutely, and I always say to donors, there is no such thing as zero overhead. It's just it means you're basically sending your money to a big black hole, and you don't know what will be the success of that organization. So we don't need a lot of people. We need good people.
right, exactly.
And that can also juggle, that are committed. These women go to sleep, they still answer emails because they're so committed to the donors that work with Keshet. And for them, it's as if it's their own company. So I would rather get a strong, capable person who can manage their own sort of portfolio without me babysitting them, rather than pay a lot of part-times, or beginners who will then get our clients very frustrated. So
and you have a clientele who was successful in something,
yes,
and they expect, and they really need, I know what it is to be in the service business, and that's what you're in.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so we opened the podcast with the past. We've been talking about the present. Let's finish with any coming attractions. I know from a tax point of view, people are always asking, will they raise the ceiling on tax? And I know you've been working and advocating for that, but just
I wish every year, all year, we've been sending even the written law of how we think it should change. We should change the tax structure for donations in Israel, beginning with possibly raising or lifting altogether the ceiling, the cap on donations, which makes no sense because there's a 30% of the taxable income. I don't understand why we need both. We've been reaching out to Smotrich and to Misrad Autzar. I think the tax authority is already agreeable. We think it will change the way the money that will come to NGOs in Israel. And I think there is no better time to do it than now when the needs are so great. I also say, we don't have to change the law fully. We can start with an amendment that will give sort of like a tzav sha'ah that will allow us to do it and see how it goes, see if it works out.
Sure.
And we just really, I will advocate for it time and again until it gets done.
Great. Okay. So again, thank you for this and revisiting, but new stuff. And people should know about Keshet, but if they want to know more, just what's your website is?
It's Keshet -il.org.
Okay. So
And or write Keren Shituf Tomim and you'll find us.
got it. Maya, thank you. Thanks for
Philip.
out of your busy day and your daily doing good deeds. So keep up the good work.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast. Feel free to visit us at www.peacestein.com.